I think we assume that bravery has to be some big, grand act, that we have to rush in and we have to save someone's life, that we have to be featured on CNN. Bravery, it's not for the small people. It's not for the average. It's not for you or me. But what if I told you that bravery could be small? That little things we do each day can amount to brilliant acts of bravery, that maybe, just maybe, it's about being a little vulnerable. So today, I chose to be brave. And I have a confession for you. I'm a college student, and I suffer from mental illness. And that's depression and anxiety, to be exact. You see, the problem with these illnesses is that they're not physical. We don't always know what we're fighting with. We can't storm castles with swords and shields. We don't feel very brave. Sometimes we just think that they're a figment of our imagination. We feel crazy. But I'm here today to tell you that these illnesses are very real. And many people have suffered from them, and there are many stories, and each and every one is beautiful and painful in some way. And today, I'm going to tell you mine. So here it is. Growing up, my parents described me as fearful and anxious. I know I would constantly look outside, check the weather, make sure it wasn't going to rain or thunder, or else I would refuse to go outside. I made it through both middle school and high school. I got by. I didn't realize that there was this illness living inside of me. Then I got to college, and as things do, they fell apart. Now, us college students, we're vulnerable. You know, we leave home for the first time. We have to worry about making new friends, about our roommates, about feeding ourselves, about exercise, about grades. And it's hard for us. It's hard to feel brave. And things like depression and anxiety, well, they start creeping in. I learned this my sophomore year of college. Now, I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's one of those things that you generally don't understand if you haven't felt it. But gradually, I felt this wave of panic, of dread, and just awfulness wash over me. I started avoiding things. This includes friends, classes, professors, assignments. If I failed something, I wouldn't want to get out of bed the next day. Now, later on, I learned that this is actually a poor coping mechanism for anxiety. Now, my sophomore year, I actually was withdrawn from every single one of my classes. I stayed in bed most days. I felt miserable. I felt like nothing mattered. And naturally, this caused some tension between me and my family. You know, it's hard to send someone away to college and watch them fail, especially when you don't know exactly what's wrong, when you can't pinpoint their suffering. So we fought. We cried. Things, well, they hurt. And all of this time, I did some writing, because to be honest with you, that's about all the bravery I had. I wrote about what it was like. I wrote poems and stories, and I actually want to read an excerpt of that for you today. Here it is. It's like feeling the weight of the universe tie you to your bed in the morning. It's missing class unexplainably, and having to come up with excuses for missing class because I'm depressed just doesn't sound like enough. It's throwing away your talents and passions because everything feels meaningless. It's feeling inexplicably dull. It's when everything you eat tastes like soap. It's being afraid to commit to anything because you don't know if you'll be able to get out of bed that day, and it's joyless. Day after day after day. The summer after my sophomore year, I started getting some help. I went to a counselor. I started taking medicine. I started exercising, being out in the sun more. But if you know anything about mental illness, you know that there isn't exactly a cure. I mean, there are treatments, but sometimes they take weeks, sometimes they take months, and sometimes they take years. So I went back for my junior year of college with this sort of false hope. I figured if I just pushed on, everything would be okay, and for a little while, it was. I was doing every single thing I was supposed to do. I was exercising, I was eating, I was taking my medicine, I was getting out of bed, but I was triggered again. My mental illness, it came back. This time it was because of a pretty toxic and abusive relationship. When my illness came back, it came back with a vengeance. I stayed in bed most days. I started questioning why I was here. Everything I had loved felt pointless. I didn't want to do anything anymore. I didn't want to be anything anymore. I just felt hopeless. That semester, I failed 2 of my classes, and I was withdrawn from the other 2. After that semester, my parents, mostly, and I knew that we needed to make some changes. This just wasn't working. So in a step of bravery, I left. I transferred. And I've gotten a lot of help. I've had a lot of support, and I've had a lot of people stand beside me. And today I can say, I'm okay. But here's the thing. Statistics tells me that I'm not the only one suffering. In fact, 1 in 4 college students is suffering from some sort of mental illness. That could be depression, anxiety, OCD, schizophrenia. So do me a favor. Picture one of those lecture halls, kind of like this, but with just 100 seats in it. Now, the professor asks 25 of those students to stand up. Those 25 students are suffering. Those 25 students are fighting an illness that they can't even touch. Now, like I said, my story is my story. I can't speak for everyone else, but I did take some time to hear what my fellow warriors had to say. I did some interviews. I heard about a girl who was too anxious to eat food, so she dropped down to 90 pounds. I heard about PTSD and intense, crippling depression from dating violence. I heard about panic attacks over being unable to make others happy. I even heard about crippling depression that sent a girl younger than me to the hospital. I asked all of these students single words or phrases to describe how they were feeling, and I noticed a common thread. It's excruciating. It's suffocating. It's constant. It's always there. And when these students stepped out in bravery, they felt like they weren't listened to. When they tried to be brave, no one was there to hear. But I want to tell you all something very simple. It's a little secret I have that has the ability to change everything. It doesn't have to be that way. See, I'm not stupid. I don't think that we can eradicate mental illness forever. I know it's going to exist, but each and every one of you in this room has the ability to stand beside those who are fighting. We have the ability to support people, to listen to them. So parents, siblings, friends, educators, everyone, you can be brave alongside us too. Now, I know this isn't always easy. If you've ever dealt with someone with mental illness before, you know it can be frustrating. You can't just give them an Advil and say, okay, feel better. You want to shake them. You want to ask them, why do you feel this way? Why can't I see it? Explain it to me. I felt people I loved run away from me. I even had a school administrator at my former university look me in the eye and tell me, this institution, it's just not meant for people like you. May that never be said to a single student ever again. We have to meet our students' bravery with acceptance, with understanding. We have to walk alongside them. Educators, I know your goal is to teach your students how to be productive members of society. You want them to be successful. You want them to get out there and change the world. But how can we be successful if we're too overwhelmed? So what can we do? Well, I encourage anyone in this room who works with mentally ill people, and especially professors, start channeling an environment where it's okay to talk about mental illness, where we can all be open about it. I had one professor tell me that while he was in grad school, he suffered from crippling depression. And in that instant, I knew I could trust him. I knew I would be safe. But there's also a flip side to that. I remember going to a professor one time and telling him, I just need an extra day on an assignment. I am too anxious. I am shutting down. I'm panicking. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And to be honest with you, I felt crazy. Now, I'm not asking for this perfect understanding of the human mind. I'm not asking for assignments without due dates. That's impractical. That's silly. But I am asking you to meet us in the middle, to come and walk alongside us and see what we can do together, because I promise it can be good. Now, I know there's probably someone in this room suffering from mental illness like me. And actually, probably more than one someone. So I want to tell you something. It's something that got me through a lot. It's a very simple fact, and I want you to remember it. I want you to write it down. I do not want you to forget this. It will not be this way forever. So please, please, keep going. Let yourself be loved. Let your story be told, and tell it to every single person who will listen. And above all, keep being brave. Thank you.